I sat at the dinner table, lazily stirring my coffee while the quiet tick of the clock echoed from the kitchen wall. Across from me, Natalie, my wife of 8 years, sat swirling a glass of red wine, a faint, self-satisfied smirk curling on her lips. It was that same smug little expression she'd worn more and more lately, the one she assumed I hadn't picked up on. She leaned back in her chair, eyes fixed on me, studying. Then she said it, like she was commenting on the weather. "I'm done pretending, Derek," she said, almost brightly. "I've been seeing someone. His name's James. Starting next week, he'll be staying over now and then." I placed my coffee cup down, slowly, deliberately. No reaction, no raised voice, no meltdown. Natalie tilted her head, waiting. I could see it. She thought she was about to watch me fall apart. She expected chaos, yelling, "Heartbreak," a begging plea for her to stay. Instead, I simply took another sip of coffee. "That's it?" she asked after a beat, irritation creeping into her voice. I wiped my mouth with a napkin. "Noted," I said calmly. Her smirk faltered. Just for a second. She hadn't prepared for indifference. She wasn't ready for silence. "You're really okay with this?" she pressed. I stood, picked up my plate, and walked to the sink. "Natalie, you've made your decision," I said, rinsing the dish. "Why would I stop you?" I could feel her eyes boring into my back. I didn't turn around. I didn't have to. What she didn't know, what she would never have guessed, was that I already knew about James. I'd known for months. She thought she was outmaneuvering me, playing some clever game. What she never realized was that she was playing on a board I had built. I dried my hands on a towel, grabbed my car keys. "Enjoy your night," I said over my shoulder. She said nothing as I stepped out the door. That was the last time Natalie ever believed she had the upper hand. She thought her little revelation was a bombshell. What she didn't know was that the bomb had gone off long ago, and she'd been standing in the wreckage ever since. The night I first suspected her, I didn't confront. I observed. The clues were subtle at first. Her phone never out of reach, the sudden late nights at work, a newfound obsession with spin classes she used to loathe. I stayed quiet. I listened. I learned. By the time her lies stacked up high enough to blot out the ceiling, I'd already moved to phase 2. I installed a second security system, one she knew nothing about. Hidden cameras in places so seamless, she passed them daily without a second glance. Then I found him, James Turner, 36, used to be in real estate, until a couple of fraud charges torched his career. Since then, he'd been bouncing from one shady gig to another, always one missed paycheck from disaster. Lucas helped, too. We hadn't been close in years, but loyalty from college runs deep. He owed me one. These days, Lucas worked in cybersecurity, and he still had a few backdoor connections. In just 2 days, he had everything: James' financials, sealed court records, even some hush-hush HR complaints James thought had disappeared. Natalie believed she was trading up. What she didn't realize was that she'd hitched herself to an anchor. I didn't rage. I didn't drink myself senseless or punch holes in drywall. I made plans. Quietly, I started shifting money from our shared account, bit by bit, in ways she wouldn't catch. I backed up everything: texts, emails, dinner receipts, hotel bookings. She thought she was being clever, sneaking around behind my back. She had no idea I was holding the leash. By the time she sat at that table smugly announcing James would be spending the night, she was already wrapped in a web with no way out. All I needed now was timing, and I've always been patient. 2 nights later, I laid the trap. I told her I had an overnight business trip. She barely looked up from her phone, smiling at whatever message she was reading. Perfect. I packed a bag, tossed it in the trunk, and drove 3 miles away to a rundown motel. From there, I opened my laptop. Every inch of the house was live-streaming right to me, clear as daylight. At 9:13 p.m., James pulled into the driveway. I watched from my creaky motel chair as he stepped out, cocky swagger and a cheap bottle of wine in hand. Natalie opened the door grinning, kissed him like a teenager. Disgusting. They made themselves comfortable. Wine poured, laughter echoing. Already too casual. Too confident. Just how I wanted them. At 10:05 p.m., I made the call. Through a secure back channel Lucas had with local law enforcement, I passed along a tip. James Turner. At my address. Violating probation. A known fraud risk. Lucas contact. A friend still plugged into the system. Ensure the report didn't vanish into red tape. By 10:27 p.m., sirens lit up the street. Natalie jumped, spilling her wine. James scrambled for his shoes. The front door burst open seconds later. James Turner. Hands where we can see them. James froze, caught like a deer in headlights. Natalie screamed as two officers tackled him to the floor. I calmly closed the laptop, picked up my motel key, and stepped into the cool night. Minutes later, I turned onto our street, just in time to see James being dragged away in handcuffs. Natalie spotted me. Through the chaos, her eyes locked onto mine, wide with rage and disbelief. "You!" she screamed. "You did this." I parked slowly, stepped out of the car, adjusted my jacket. "Evening, Natalie," I said, smooth as ever. James was still shouting from the squad car, but no one was listening. I stood on the curb, hands tucked into my pockets, while Natalie stormed toward me, red face and shaking. "You set him up," she hissed. "You're insane." I gave a casual shrug. "No, Natalie, I'm just better at this than you." One of the officers brushed past, holding a clear evidence bag. Inside it, James's switchblade, freshly pulled from his coat. Natalie's face went pale the moment she saw it. "You don't understand what you've done," she said, her voice cracking. "He could go to prison." I stepped closer, speaking low enough that only she could hear. "He will go to prison. And you? This is just the beginning." For the first time since she opened the front door that night, Natalie didn't have a witty reply. Her eyes darted around, flashing red and blue lights, curious neighbors peeking through curtains, officers digging through James's car, collecting evidence. The dream she thought she was chasing, the new life she believed was waiting, was crumbling right in front of her. "You're ruining everything," she whispered. I gave her a cold smile. "No, Natalie, you did that. I'm just making sure you can't lie your way out of it." She stepped back like she might run, but where would she go? James was already in cuffs. Police were swarming, and I was standing calmly between her and the street. For the first time in a long time, I saw something real in her eyes. "Faye, you think this makes you better than me," she spat finally, her pride scraping together one last stand. I tilted my head slightly. "Not better, just smarter, and a hell of a lot more patient." One of the officers gave her a small nod, signaling her to step aside while they finished the paperwork. She hesitated, glanced back at me, biting down whatever insult she had loaded. I watched her retreat a few steps. No longer the queen of the castle, just another messy footnote in someone else's arrest report. Once the last squad car rolled away, the house fell silent, disturbingly so. Natalie sat slumped on the couch, still gripping her phone like a life preserver. I stood by the window, watching the street return to normal. "You satisfied now?" she finally snapped, her voice scrape raw. I turned slowly to face her. "Not yet." She shot up from the couch, eyes wide with disbelief. "You can't just wreck people's lives because you're hurt." I let out a short laugh. "You wrecked your own life, Natalie. I'm just speeding up the consequences." She thrust her phone toward me. "I'll get a lawyer. I'll take half of everything. You think you're clever, but you're not untouchable." I didn't even flinch. Instead, I walked across the room, picked up an envelope from the side table, and dropped it right in front of her on the coffee table. She stared at it, hesitating, then ripped it open. Her eyes scanned the first few pages before they widened in disbelief. You can't be serious," she whispered. "Prenup," I said simply. "You signed it, remember? Right before the wedding." She flipped through the paperwork, more frantic now, flipping pages like she could will the words a change. "My lawyer's already filed for divorce," I added. "It's all in motion." This can't be legal," she said in a panic. "It's airtight," I replied. "Every account you tried to touch has already been locked down. Every asset you tried to hide under James's name, already traced back to you." She fumbled for her phone, opened her banking app, and froze. I watched the color drain from her face. 0. You stole from me, she said, barely above a whisper. No, I said calmly. I protected what was mine. She collapsed back into the couch, all the fight gone from her body. Just silence. After a long pause, she looked up, trying to find her footing again. You think this is it? That you won? I smiled. Oh, Natalie, that was just the financial part. Her gaze sharpened, panic returning. There's still the social side of things, and that's going to sting a lot more. I walked out of the room, leaving her alone with the silence, the empty walls, and the weight of everything she was about to lose. But I wasn't done, not even close. The next morning, her world went up in flames. I sat calmly at the kitchen table, scrolling through my phone, while Natalie paced the living room like a caged animal. Her voice rose and fell with every desperate phone call. What do you mean I'm suspended? She cried into the receiver. You can't do this to me. I sipped my coffee and waited. The post had gone live at exactly 6 a.m., timed with precision. Photos of her and James, kissing, laughing, wrapped around each other like teenagers. Screenshots of their messages, cruel jokes at my expense, flirtations, mockery, receipts from hotel stays, weekend getaways, all published anonymously and shared in all the right places. Her colleagues, her boss, her family, the social circle she spent years building. The perfect image Natalie had curated for nearly a decade, shattered in under an hour. Her phone buzzed nonstop. Messages piled up. Some calls she answered, others she ignored. None of it mattered. By lunchtime, her sister had blocked her. Her parents stopped replying. Her best friend, the one who once promised loyalty forever, sent one final message. Don't ever contact me again. Natalie stood in the center of the living room, hands trembling, staring at her screen like it might somehow undo everything if she looked hard enough. Then she turned to me, wide-eyed and breathless. You planned this, she said. It wasn't a question. I gave a small shrug. Things catch up eventually. You're just not used to being held accountable. Tears welled in her eyes, but I felt nothing. No guilt. No sympathy. This wasn't cruelty. It was balance being restored. You ruined my life, she whispered, barely audible. I stood, sliding my phone into my pocket. No, Natalie, you ruined it the moment you opened the door to James. I just made sure everyone else finally saw who you really were. She sank into the couch like her legs couldn't hold her up anymore. Her phone slipped from her grasp and buzzed one last time, her boss's number. Suspension had been step one. Termination came next. I didn't need to hear the conversation to know how it would end. When she hung up, her job was gone too, and with it, the last thread connecting her to the life she once had. By that evening, the house was silent except for the soft knock at my bedroom door. Her voice followed, small, hollow. Derek, please, can we talk? I opened the door slowly. She stood there, clinging to the frame like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Gone was the woman who once rolled her eyes at my warnings and smirked behind my back. Her hair was tangled, skin pale, eyes red-rimmed and tired. I don't have anywhere else to go, she whispered. I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. You picked James. Remember? Her face fell. His not answering. His just gone. Everyone's gone. I said nothing. Let the weight of her own words do the damage. I made a mistake, she said softly, tears tracing down her cheeks. I was stupid. I thought he loved me. I raised an eyebrow. And you thought I'd just wait around while you figured that out. She shook her head, frantic now. I'm sorry. I swear I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I studied her, quiet for just long enough that hope started flickering in her eyes. Then I said, calm and steady, not my problem. I began to close the door, but she grabbed it, desperation flaring. Please, Derek, don't do this. One by one, I peeled her fingers off the edge of the door. You did this to yourself, I said. You just never thought you'd actually have to pay for it. She crumpled to her knees in the hallway, sobbing. I didn't stay to watch. I shut the door gently, locked it, walked back to my bed, lay down, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I slept soundly. She had made her choices. Now, she could live with them. Alone. A week passed. The house felt like mine again. She was gone, packed whatever scraps she had left and disappeared one afternoon. No note, no goodbye, not even a text. That evening, I stood in the middle of the living room. The last rays of daylight slid across the hardwood floors. Silence wrapped around the place like a warm blanket. No tension, no performance, just peace. The divorce papers had already been processed. No contest, no claims. She walked away with nothing. No money, no home, not even the car, just as the prenup outlined. I'd made sure of it. I heard later that James was denied bail. Turns out his record was even worse than Lucas had uncovered. Fraud, scams, a pending assault case. A real charmer. Natalie had tried bouncing between old friends' couches, but no one wanted to be seen cleaning up her mess. The scandal made her radioactive. She reached out once, maybe twice. A missed call, a desperate email. I didn't respond. She was a ghost now. A cautionary tale. A lesson. I set my phone down, pushed back from the table, and stepped out onto the porch, coffee in hand. The morning was crisp. A few neighbors waved. Life moved on. Normal. Steady. Quiet. I thought back to that night at the dinner table, the way she smiled, so sure she was winning. She expected me to beg, to crumble, to fight for her. Instead, I smiled and walked away. That had been the beginning of her unraveling. People think betrayal is one sharp moment, a clean break. But it's not. It's slow. It spreads. By the time it surfaces, the rot's already deep. Natalie never saw that. Never understood the quiet damage she'd done. I finished my coffee and leaned back in the chair, watching the sun rise higher. Not with bitterness. Not with anger. Just peace. The kind you earn the hard way.